Part 11. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 102. Chapter 102, 3 turns and 2 rings, please vote for recommendation. However, Mei Shui is in a bit of a dilemma now. Does she really not want to teach them how to make wine? But after thinking about it, I might as well forget it. On this day, Mei Shui took the lead and took 3.5-year-old boys to pick wild grapes on their mountain. Because she wanted a lot, she spent the whole day picking. She ate a bit of lunch and everyone went up the mountain again. When Grandma He saw the grapes in the yard, she quickly put them into the utility room, otherwise she would definitely be harmed by the chickens in the yard. It wasn't until night, when Mei Shui came back with 3 people and found that the grapes at home were no less than 100 caddies, that Mei Shui stopped. Okay, there's no need to go tomorrow, Mei Shui said with a satisfied look on her face as she looked at so many grapes. Sister-in-law, you can't go even if you want to. We all have to go to school tomorrow, and Liang sat on the ground weakly, holding a cup in his hand, drinking water while answering. Ah, don't you have 2 days off? Mei Shui really didn't know. There are only 2 days, just a day and a half a day on Friday and 1 day on Saturday. I have to go to school tomorrow morning, and Liang felt that going to school was really hard. He still had to do so much homework. Thinking of this, and Liang cried, "Ugh, sister-in-law, I haven't even finished my homework yet." This time it was Mei Shui's turn to feel a little embarrassed. After all, she had delayed their homework. How about I help you do it? The education at this time should not be as good as hers, right? Sister-in-law, do you know how to do it? And Liang smiled bitterly. Forget it, I'll do the same thing at night, as long as I can hand it over to the teacher tomorrow. At worst, I'll sleep less. Meigs really wanted to say that she could, but she swallowed the words that came to her lips. Okay, I'll give you a good dose tonight. Grandma He has been listening to the conversation of several people and is very happy. Take it up, make it up. Grandma made bone soup for you today to make up for your brain. Grandma He's words hurt her heart. After having a good meal at the third grandma's house, the 3 of them hurried back home. Mei Shui arrived and she was not too tired, but when she saw Grandma busy there, she felt a little distressed and said, "Grandma has worked hard today. I will be at home tomorrow, so you can stay away from the fields. She has to water the vegetables this afternoon. She filled the pool yesterday, but it was not easy to water such a large area." It's okay, Grandma can still work. She's not too tired, she used to work a lot. Grandma is great. She is coaxing the children. With help from others, we have all the raw materials. We will clean and dry them tomorrow, and then we can squeeze the grapes. These wild grapes are not as big as the grapes grown at home. They are only about the size of a little finger. Even if they weigh 100 kilograms, they can be packed. It will be good to finish 3 or 4 tanks. Wine is different from plum wine. Plum wine needs wine as a primer, while wine has to ferment on its own, otherwise it won't be able to produce wine. The next day, Mei Shui got up early and tidied up the house, fed the chickens and piglets, and then took out the grapes from the utility room to wash. Fortunately, there is a shaking well in the yard, otherwise we would have to move it to the back of the house, which would be very troublesome. Grandma He may have been tired yesterday and got up a little late today. She didn't come out of the house until Mei Shui asked her to get up for breakfast. When he came out, Mei Shui clearly felt that there was something wrong with his feet. "Grandma, does your leg hurt?" she asked, looking at her as she walked a little unsteadily. Grandma He held onto the door frame and said, "No more." She waved her hand. "It's not painful, maybe I haven't done so much work for a long time, and my legs are a little sore." Grandma He didn't lie to Xiaoxiu either. "After you got married, you said to yourself, how long has it been since Grandma did any heavy work?" After saying this, Grandma He looked happy. Mei Shui was happy. "Grandma, please take more rest recently and don't run down the mountain." Come, I will help you, grandma is so cute. At the breakfast table, Mei Shui asked about Wen's blind date. I heard that the girl is pretty good looking. What is her temperament? Your Aunt Zillian thinks she's passable. She's not a strong-willed girl. In terms of character, the matchmaker said she's not bad, grandma, he said while eating. Can you trust what the matchmaker says? Mei Shui didn't understand. Like a matchmaker, she would definitely not say that the person she introduced was bad. She would usually say the best. Don't worry about it. The matchmaker is your grandma Meng's daughter-in-law. You have to call her Aunt Yanzi when you see her. The girl is from her natal family, but there are a lot of brothers in the family, of course, grandma, he inquired clearly. Oh, have you taken a fancy to Wen? Since there are people from the village as guarantees, I think it won't be too bad. Wen is like a piece of wood, he doesn't dare to say a word when meeting people. Speaking of this, grandma, he felt that she had no future. Sigh, nothing compared to that boy in Liang. These things were what Aunt Zillian had been nagging to grandma he after she came back, mainly because she also wanted to hear third aunt's opinion. Then he always knows whether he is interested in him or not, Mei Suifang. Because he should have taken a liking to her, otherwise he wouldn't have said a word, grandma, he said like a divine calculator. Okay, if you like it, there will be a happy event before the Chinese New Year regarding marriage. Mei Shui prefers to watch other people get married. Let's see and then talk about it, it's still early. After breakfast, Mei Shui and grandma he were washing grapes in the yard. But not long after, Aunt Zillian and Aunt Milian came over. Why are you here? There's a big market tomorrow. If you don't make sweet scented Osman thus cake at home, why are you here? Grandma, he asked with a questioning look on her face when she saw the visitor. Oh, why don't you come to third aunt for some advice? Aunt Zillian responded quickly. This matter is also her family's business and she needs to speak out. What's the matter, grandma? He didn't retreat and asked immediately. What else could it be? It's not Wen's marriage. Aunt Milian came here to hear the news. Aunt Zillian also nodded. Both Jensi and I are a little undecided about this matter, so we want to ask third aunt. Mei Shui called the two of them and listened from the sidelines. Then tell me. It turns out that I got a reply from the girl's family. But the reply to this letter was really fast. The reason is that the third brother of the girl's family is getting married, and the family has little money. Getting married now is not the same as before, where you could get a wife with just a little food. Now you have to go around and around. That's all money. Who can come up with so much money? In the past, it was better to ask for tickets, which were not so expensive, but now we don't need tickets, because those things are extremely expensive, and the sound now is not a watch, but a TV. This thing is so expensive, who can afford it? So the Li family came up with the idea of taking their sister. And the girl from the Li family is also a naughty girl. After knowing her family's plans, she is not stubborn and will go on a blind date. As long as she likes someone, she will accept it. It was better than being sold out by her family in the end. If she didn't leave a way out for herself early, she would be afraid of hard times later. It can be seen from this that the girl from the Li family is smart. End of this chapter. 80s, the farmer's wife is the boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 103. Chapter 103, Wen's thoughts. Grandma Meng's daughter-in-law has been married for so many years, so how can she know her natal family too well? In addition, this matter was kept secret by the Li family, and no one even knew about their success. When her mother asked her on the way home from a blind date yesterday, she nodded. The main thing is that she can tell that the wood has a good impression of her. Even if she deliberately made herself look darker and ugly. After her family refused to let her go to school, she learned how to protect herself. It's not that her parents are cruel, but that the conditions at home are like this. If she hadn't changed her image intentionally or unintentionally, she would have gotten married early. How can I survive until now? Because she was ugly and undesirable, and because she was a hard worker, the family had no intention of marrying her off early. So until now, if the third child hadn't been getting married, I'm afraid the Lee family wouldn't be in a hurry. Weird. The Lee family also announced that if they couldn't buy enough after 3 rounds, they would just take 800 yuan. An Wen also got the letter, but he was shocked by the 800 yuan. His family didn't have any. I don't know why, but I missed a section. After listening to Aunt Zillian's words, Grandma he frowned and said, "You'd better ask Yanzi first to ask what's going on. If An Wen doesn't like it, then just reply and withdraw." With 800 yuan, Grandma he didn't think there was anything she couldn't give. It was not easy to raise a daughter. If it were Xiaoxiu, she wouldn't marry even if she was 800. It is natural to give some betrothal gifts, but considering the current prices, it is too high. But her family wants 800 yuan. Our family can't afford this much money. She could see the expression on her son's face that embarrassed her to death. I know my son may have some thoughts, but this. Let me ask you first. Business cannot be done at a fixed price. There may be something involved. Grandma he interrupted Zillion. That's it, you go and beat Mrs. Yanzi first, and ask about the situation first. Aunt Mei Lian finally figured it out, and she might be satisfied with the daughter-in-law, but because of the conditions, her family was in trouble. It's only 800 yuan, which is really a lot. 200 yuan and a few new clothes are enough. Grandma he did not come up with random ideas and asked her to find someone first to find out what was going on with the Li family. After the others left, Mei Shui looked at her grandma. Is 800 yuan a lot? Their family has more than 1500 yuan, right? Not counting her previous money. Grandma he was choked up in her heart. You little girl, don't say this outside, as if our family is so rich. Grandma he looked outside the courtyard with a scared look on her face, as if someone was eavesdropping. I won't say it outside, but our family is indeed not rich. Mei Shui secretly made up her mind to earn more money for her grandma. It seems that the things she has at home are not enough. She has to open some more land and grow some vegetables. Winter is coming soon, and those vegetables should be harvested by the end of the month. By then, she will plant all the radishes and cabbages, which can be sold until after the Chinese New Year. Furthermore, radish can be used in many dishes, including stir-frying and stewing. Don't produce too many dishes. Hearing Xiaoxiu's words, Grandma he opened her mouth without saying anything. Finally she shook her head and said, I'm afraid the Li family is not a happy one. Asking for 500 to open your mouth doesn't mean marrying off your daughter. Let's sell her daughter. The words are said in a roundabout way, but who in the countryside has really gotten it together? Isn't it just the same thing? Previously we were giving food, but now we are giving money. There is no owner who bids such a high price. Besides, the conditions in Ljia village are not as good as in Hejia village. On the top of the mountain, the roads are not very accessible. You can only go to a large market by walking, and carriages cannot even get up there. Let alone a tractor. Xiaoxiu, go and ask An Wen to come over. I'll ask him something after all. Grandma he was still worried about getting closer. Mei Shui got up and went next door to call An Wen. He happened to be at home, but after seeing him, Mei Shui felt that she was a child, so she was shocked, and she would have to live her life in the future. How can life be very smooth and smooth? Grandma is looking for you. Seeing him like this, Mei Shui wanted to slap him, but she was afraid of damaging him, so forget it and leave it to Grandma. If it were anyone else, hey, she wouldn't even take a glance at it. Sister-in-law. Follow up. Mei Shui didn't want to talk nonsense to him. When he came to the He family's courtyard, An Wen was as obedient as a child. When he saw the third grandma's sullen face, his little heart started beating hard. Third grandma, but under pressure, she still came over. When she saw the person coming, Grandma he said nothing. Nonsense, have you taken a fancy to that girl? 800 yuan is a lot of money. Given their family's ability, it is difficult. The direct question shocked An Wen. Third grandma. He took 2 steps back in fear. Let me ask you, have you fallen in love with that girl, grandma? He kept moving her hands and looked up at An Wen again and asked. At the third grandma's place, he felt even more stressed than his parents. He swallowed, and finally An Wen nodded. Look, I'm attracted to her. If you like it, do you know what the 800 yuan is about? An Wen shook his head. I don't know. He really doesn't know. Why does he need 800 yuan? This is too much. Has the girl ever talked to you alone or given you something? Grandma, he was a good person, and she could basically guess some of An Wen's changes. If the girl hadn't said anything, this silly boy wouldn't have let his mother ask. With his temperament, if he didn't care, he would ask his mother to back off the matter when he heard the 800 yuan. But now he has not said anything, so he must know something. As soon as he heard this, An Wen raised his head and looked at the third grandma. Third grandma, how do you know? If he hadn't confirmed that the third grandma didn't follow him yesterday, he would have thought that the third grandma had seen it with her own eyes. Oh, if there is anything you don't understand about your performance, tell me what's going on. If it doesn't work, don't let your mother eat the steak, and you won't be afraid of making your mother angry. An Wen realized at this time, yes, if it didn't work out, if her mother came to ask, she was afraid that they would say some unpleasant words to make her mother angry. Third grandma, you have to help me. An Wen had no idea at this time. She just handed me a message. She likes me. She will not marry me unless I am, and she asked me to wait for her. Hearing An Wen's words, Mei Shui became energetic and looked at him with bright eyes. Is that girl good looking? She suddenly said. An Wen shook his head. Not as good looking as my sister-in-law. A silly smile appeared on his face. Seeing him like this, grandma, he poured water on his face angrily. If you dare to make fun of your sister-in-law, I'll beat you up. Originally, she is not as good looking as my sister-in-law, nor as capable as her, but there are a few people like her in the world. An Wen said disapprovingly. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 104. Chapter 104, Consequences of Borrowing Money. Hearing what he said, grandma, he smiled and said, if you are discerning, of course my Xiaoxiu is the best. My Xiu was speechless. Let's get down to business. Since she's not good looking, why did you like her? An Wen couldn't answer. He was so confused that he couldn't even see how to answer this question. I think she is suitable for me. I told her about my family's situation. This condition must not have been raised by her. An Wen said with certainty. Grandma, he figured it out. If you really marry her, your in-laws' family will be in a lot of trouble in the future. At this time, grandma, he was a little unprepared. No, at worst, I won't go back to my parents' home. An Wen shook his head quickly. If you don't go back to your parents' home, you have a conscience. Anyway, those are the parents who raised her. They didn't starve her to death, and they didn't give her clothes and clothes. From what your mother said, she must have graduated from junior high school. That's it. Do you agree not to go back to your parents' home? If your daughter has been abused by her mother's family, it is okay for you to live your own life after getting married. But obviously the Li family is not in this situation, and they don't know what is going on over there. There was nothing wrong with the Li family, it was just that between a son and a daughter, they chose their son. You have to be her, Mei Shui asked from the side. An Wen immediately became energetic when he saw his sister-in-law asking, well, sister-in-law, help me. Mei Shui never expected that An Wen would say this to her. In the past, his father didn't ask for help when buying medicine, but now. I have to say that when you marry a daughter-in-law, you forget about your mother. It would be okay if that girl from the Lee family was nice, but if she was a picky person, Aunt Zillion and the others would have a hard time in the future. Since there is no one around now, Mei Shui can't say much. If you two are interested and her family won't let go, I'll lend you this money. I believe it won't take long for you to pay me back with the skills she taught. Are you still worried about not being able to pay back the money? Even if it's not enough, you can get it artificially, don't be afraid. Really, he Anwen was excited. Fake before Anwen could be happy, Grandma he immediately poured a basin of cold water on him. Zioxiu, you have to think clearly. If the girl from the Lee family is not good, your Aunt Zillion may blame you in the future. This is human nature. Even if you are close to someone, you will shirk responsibility. Now you lend money to them, and you are happy and grateful, but when something goes wrong, I am afraid it will be your fault alone. No, third grandma, my mother is not that kind of person. He Anwen heard what third grandma said and immediately started to defend his mother. Mei Shui also felt that she was a little impulsive, but the words had been spoken, and it was up to Anwen himself what to do. You go back and discuss it before making a decision. 800 yuan is not a small amount. You also have to buy wine and wedding supplies. These are all money. Mei Shui has experienced it personally. He spent a lot of money. Well, I'll listen to my sister-in-law. As long as my sister-in-law is willing to borrow it, there will be a lot more room for manipulation. Come on, let's get to work. You're not going out anyway. Grandma he rolled her eyes at him and immediately gave orders. Anwen didn't waste any time and immediately helped wash the grapes and dry them. 100 kilograms of grapes were finally washed, and Mei Shui took the vat out to wash and dry them. Seeing this scene, what else did he Anwen not understand? Sister-in-law plans to make wine again. Meixia glanced at him and said, well, I won't teach you how to drink wine. She said it quickly. It's okay, I don't want to learn either. Anwen touched his head stupidly and said, of course he wants to learn, but he is too embarrassed to learn in vain. That would be the best, Grandma, he said angrily. Teaching 3 families how to make plum wine, only 2 of them gave gifts in return. She didn't fancy that thing, she just felt that they were grateful, but what about Enlin? Haha, let alone a return gift, there is no bullshit, and I haven't even heard a word of thanks. At noon, Aunt Zillion and the others came back and visited Grandma he again. Grandma he told her about Mei Shui's willingness to lend money. But let me explain first, no matter whether this daughter-in-law is good or bad in the future, it has nothing to do with Mei Shui. Of course, Aunt Zillion would not be such a white-eyed wolf. She immediately pinched Anwen's waist and promised that from now on, no matter whether it was good or bad, she would have nothing to do with Mei Shui. This matter is now waiting for a letter from the Li family to see what kind of regulations they have. If you don't let go, Aunt Zillion won't let them achieve it just like this. The next day happened to be a big market, and every village would go out to the market. Aunt Zillion and Aunt Milian were selling sweet-scented osmanthus cakes for the first time today, and they were unsure. He dragged Mei Shui onto the street and asked her to help shake things up. Meixia didn't care. She just went to the street to buy some candies and came back. She forgot to buy rock candy yesterday. When you come to Daji, it is impossible to go to the place where the stalls were set up before, because they are all selling vegetables. Mei Shui was not very familiar with Daji, so she didn't make any random ideas. Now that Aunt Milian is familiar with the town, she thought about it and decided to place it between the vegetable market and the meat shop. There were not many people setting up stalls here anyway, so it was a good time for them to go. So, Mei Shui followed them. As soon as they arrived, they set up the stall with the stools they brought. You can't put food on the ground, so they brought 2 high stools and put 7 or 8 steamer baskets of sweet-scented osmanthus cakes on them. Business begins. There are a lot of people coming and going, but at this early hour, the people who come are all doing business, and customers have to wait for a while. Mei Shui wanted to walk around, but seeing no one there, Aunt Mei Lian and the others agreed. Mai Xiu planned to go see if there was any beef for sale. She had almost eaten all the beef jerky at home, and Hians also took away more than half of it. There are only 2 yuan left at home, and it's all eaten in one meal, and I'm still not full. The taste of beef is not comparable to that of pork. Having eaten it once, I still want to eat it a second time. When they came to the place where the meat was sold, Mei Shui looked around. But she couldn't find beef after searching around. It seemed that this thing was really hard to find. No wonder it was more expensive than pork. She should have bought more last time. Regret. Mei Shui was about to go back when she heard someone calling her, Zioxiu, Zioxiu girl. Mai Xiu raised her head to look at the voice calling her. She was happy when she saw her. Boss Chang, business is busy. You girl, why haven't you come to sell vegetables for so long? He was looking forward to every big gathering. The old lady at home has become naughty, and her appetite for food has dropped again. Alas! All the vegetables at home are sold out. Mei Shui still understands the truth behind Cai Bulletin Lu Bai Kong, and she has no intention of telling Boss Cheng about Boss Zhao. It is impossible for homegrown dishes to be sold at large markets for a long time. Aren't you going to plant more later? Boss Cheng said with a pity on his face. Mei Shui shook her head. I haven't planted much. It's already winter, so I can't grow anything. It's winter, haha, it's an excuse. Even if Mei Shui grows vegetables in winter, it's just a trivial matter. Don't stop voting. End of this chapter. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 105. Chapter 105, All Sold. That's a pity. I was planning to buy some more food from you. Boss Cheng looked disappointed. But he thought of another thing. Do you still have chickens for sale? The chickens he collected last time were very popular. Those dozens of chickens were sold out in a few days. It's several times faster than what I usually sell. We still have chickens at home, but they are still small and cannot be eaten. Mei Shui replied with a smile. She doesn't plan to sell the chicken to Boss Cheng anymore. Wouldn't it be nice to sell it to Uncle Zhao? The price is too high. Seeing Boss Cheng like this, he thought he was benefiting from it, but he didn't tell him that he shouldn't have close friendships with this person. Boss Cheng, I have something to do, so I'll leave first. If I sell vegetables again next time, can I bring them to you? Mei Shui said politely. Okay, by the way, what are you here to sell at the market today? Normally people wouldn't come to the market if they have nothing to do. Mei Shui thought of Aunt Mei Lian's Osman Thus cake and immediately smiled and said, I sell Osman Thus cake now. It tastes pretty good. Would you like some, Boss Chang? By the way, how did she get here? I don't know if she can help Aunt Mei Lian and the others sell some. Yes, give me £2. He believed this girl. Mei Shui was happy. Okay, she didn't push it, but if someone bought it, she wouldn't stop selling it. I'll send it to you in a minute. 1 yuan and a half a pound. There is sugar in it, so it's more expensive. Sure, I want 2 caddies. After hearing the price, Boss Cheng still wanted 2 caddies. After Mei Shui left, she went to find Aunt Mei Lian and the others, but they were also busy and didn't notice Mei Shui for a while. They didn't expect that the sweet-scented Osman Thus cake would be so easy to sell, and everyone would buy a pound of it whenever they asked. They were really happy. Fortunately, they listened to Zioxiu and made each piece weighing about a kilogram. Otherwise, they would have to get a scale, which would be a lot of trouble. It's just right now, 1 pound per piece. Just take a few pieces if you need a few pounds, and cut them up yourself when you get home. Auntie, give me 2 pounds. Mei Shui walked up behind the 2 people and said immediately after seeing that there were few people around. Oh, Okay, the two of them listened to Mei Shui's words and did whatever she said. When they heard that she wanted 2 kilograms, they gave it to her without saying a word. Afterwards I remembered, Xiaoxiu, are you hungry? No, it was a man who used to buy my vegetables who often wanted 2 kilograms. I gave it to him, right over there. His family sells chickens here. After saying that, Mei Shui turned around and left. They didn't expect the Osman Thus cake business to be so good, and they sold out everything in the steamer at noon. In the end, I couldn't even eat a piece. Let's go home quickly. Mei Shui has bought all the things she wants. It's noon, and the food outside is not as good as the food at home. She wants to go back to eat. She doesn't want to eat steamed buns or anything like that. Okay, Xiaoxiu, please wait for me. I'll give you 2 pieces of sweet-scented Osman Thus cake to Sister Lixia. She had prepared these at home, and there was no need to do business here. They say her brothers are very good at calculating wealth, so she can't let her sister-in-law suffer. Oh, you go ahead, Aunt Zillion and I will move to the carriage together. Mei Shui laughed when she heard it was Sister Lixia. Okay, I'm sorry to trouble Xiaoxiu. When Aunt Mei Lian came back, they also loaded everything into the carriage. As soon as they arrived, the 3 of them drove He Jiannan's carriage to the village. If you hurry on the way, you will be in time for lunch. After doing business for the first time, Mei Shui could see that both Aunt Zillion and Aunt Milian had let go of themselves. Next time, there will be no need for her. It just so happened that she didn't want to go to town recently, so she stayed at home to take care of the work in the fields and the chickens and pigs at home. Also, she plans to dig some wild grapevines back from the mountains to see if she can grow them with a different flavor. If you add spiritual spring water, I think the taste will be even more different. As soon as she got off the car, Mei Shui rushed home. It happened that her grandma was eating alone at home. Grandma, I'm back. As soon as she entered the yard, Mei Shui shouted into the house. Grandma he didn't even put down the bowls and chopsticks in her hand, so she went straight out. Why did you come back so early? All the sweet-scented Osman Thus cakes were sold. Grandma he looked surprised. Well, they're all sold, they're all sold. Mei Shui was also happy for them. Business is so good. At this time, Grandma he felt a little regretful. If I had known that the business was so good, I might as well have done it myself. Mei Shui was happy as if she understood her grandma's expression, now does not mean the future. She consoled her. Yes, maybe it's novel. Grandma he could only comfort herself in this way. You haven't eaten yet, come in and eat quickly, Grandma has just made it. After lunch, Mei Shui began to sort out her grapes. She also had to turn the grapes over so that they could dry out some of the water. In the afternoon, Mei Shui got up from her nap and started squeezing the grapes. All the fruits were crushed and even the skins were thrown into the vat. Grandma he also took a vat and threw it together like Mei Shui did. Place a layer of grapes and a layer of sugar. When there is half a tank, change another tank. She used all the tanks she bought, and not a single one was wasted. After finishing the work at home, Mei Shui went to fill the pool in the vegetable field with water in the afternoon. The days were dull and happy, and An Wen's marriage also came to fruition. The Li family finally asked for 500 yuan, and the dowry only consisted of a quilt and nothing large. The Li family is equivalent to giving up on their daughter. The girl from the Li family also acquiesced in her parents' behavior and didn't ask for anything, only taking away her own things. Mei Shui didn't know the inside story, but there were still some days before An Wen got married. The wedding date was set for November, and she asked her husband to check it out. This was the only good month. Because of money matters, An Wen finally borrowed 2 yuan from Mei Shui. Anyway, now that his wife is married, she will have to live a better life in the future. He planned to make some more plum wine next year at most. Finally, the important matter of his life has been solved. An Wen also focused on chopping wood. He had to make money and support his family in the future. He couldn't let his parents and wife suffer the injustice after him. It was another weekend, and Mei Shui pulled on Liang up again this time and asked them to help her go up the mountain to dig wild grape trees. I have to work as soon as I come back, and the faces of 3 people look miserable. In the end, Mei Shui couldn't stand it anymore and asked a few people to bring something to eat on the mountain at noon today. What to eat on the mountain? Of course it's game. This time, the 3 of them jumped up happily. But when envy was broken, but now he has no time to put on these small things, and he wants to make money. Mei Shui didn't intend to call him either. The 4 of them ran into the mountains and forests again. With the sweetness that Mei Shui throws out, the 3 of them are very diligent in doing things. She didn't need many vines, just 5 or 6. She planted them behind her house. There was a mountain behind her house, so it was perfect for them to grow directly against the mountain. A new week has begun, everyone, please act quickly and ask for recommendation votes, rewards, and support. By the way, my friends in the bookstore, please give me a reward. It's empty and pitiful. Hee please. End of this chapter. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 106. Chapter 106, Heavy Rain. After eating on the mountain at noon, these 3 people were no longer needed in the afternoon, so Mei Shui drove them back. We can't delay them doing their homework any longer today. Looking at the home she had decorated little by little, Mei Shui showed a sincere smile on her face. Haha, we only have to build a new house next year. Yes, she wants to build a new house. Step by step, life is conforming to her plan, and the tension of the previous life is gradually loosened, and she is gradually integrating into this family that makes her feel at ease. Even if there is a little surprise in the middle, there is an extra man. But, to her, it's not important. As long as the general direction is still there. After the grapevine Mei Shui was planted, it was her first time to plant trees, so she directly used the spiritual spring water, fearing that they would not survive. She did not release spiritual spring water from the well at home, because it consumes a lot of water and would only be wasted if used in this way. It is usually diluted in your own water tank. You must strive for your best, don't let me down. After pouring the last gourd of water, Mei Shui said to several vines like a child. Grandma, he looked on and laughed, you are like a child, how can they understand what you are saying? Meixiu didn't care and shook her head. Maybe they will understand, who knows? Okay, everything you said is right, come on over and take a rest, you've been busy in the mountains for another day, you must be tired. Grandma was very concerned. Not tired. After the improvement of the spiritual spring water, the body has been slowly approaching the body of his previous life. How can he get tired so easily? It's just that her powers in the last world cannot be used in this world. If they could be used, she could say that she was invincible. Of course, thermal weapons do not count. You must know that even gods cannot resist the damage caused by the destruction of the universe. For her, keeping a low profile is king, not to mention that she has long lost the ability to protect herself. Uncle Genkei also handed over the public food for the family on his behalf. This year, because of Mei Shui, the family did not use rice to pay for the public grain, but directly used money to offset it. It's a total of 53 yuan, and this is when there are only 3 people in the family. I have to say that Mei Shui's household registration was also transferred with the help of Heans and the village chief. By the end of the year, Mei Shui was also a landowner, but no one before her got married or died, so her land belonged to the village. The fields in the village are not in a good location, and the same goes for the mountains. I'm afraid they are similar to the He family's previous fields, which were leftovers picked out by others. The longer she lives in this village, the more Mei Shui understands the difficulty of her grandmother. Everything is left over by others. Not everyone can endure the hardships, but Grandma endured it all in order to survive and provide for her grandson. It also caused a lot of trauma to her body. Fortunately, Mei Shui came. Using her spiritual spring water to help Grandma regulate her body, not to mention becoming an immortal, but living a long life is not a problem. A few years ago, there was basically no work in the fields at home, and now it is also the slack time for farming. That night, shortly after Mei Shui fell asleep, the sounds of wind, rain, and thunder were heard outside. Having been here for so long, she has experienced rain and other things, but this is the first time she has heard thunder. Lightning is comparable to a 10-watt light bulb. When it flashes, the room appears bright. Mei Shui stood up. The rain was not terrible for her, but there were chicken coops in the yard, and those chickens couldn't withstand such a heavy wind and rain. After getting dressed, Mei Shui opened the door and saw that it was raining heavily outside. She immediately went to the utility room next door to find a raincoat and moved the chicken to the outside room. This is the last rain since the beginning of autumn, and Mei Shui feels that it is unlikely to stop immediately. Not only did Mei Shui get up, but Grandma he was also worried about her family and Mei Shui. She heard the noise outside and opened the door and came out. Is it light snow? People in the mountains are a little afraid of heavy rain, because when it rains heavily, there will be floods. Floods are not the most terrifying thing, but the most terrifying thing is that their homes are built against the mountains. Fear of landslides. This is also the reason why every household will build an extra row of houses behind their houses, which are not used to live in people, but to live in livestock. Grandma, it's me. Why are you up? Come in quickly. It's windy and rainy outside and it's very cold. When she heard Grandma calling her, Mei Shui ran over immediately. Grandma, please put on some more clothes, it's very windy outside, and thin long sleeves like this can't withstand the wind. Grandma is not cold, what are you doing? Seeing Mei Shui wearing a raincoat, Grandma he asked anxiously, don't go out, there's thunder outside. Thunder is a very scary thing for Grandma he. I'm fine. I moved the chickens into the house. If they are exposed to the rain all night, they may get sick tomorrow. Mei Shui was thinking about the chickens she had raised. The chicken coops built at home are all simple cages, which are fine in the summer because they can have a place to sleep at night. But in the rainy season or winter, the chicken coops need to be covered with plastic material around them, otherwise the chickens will not survive. Can't survive the winter. But no one expected that the heavy rain would come so suddenly, and neither of them were prepared for it. The heavy rain came. Grandma, I'll help you catch her. Grandma he was worried about Mei Shui being alone. No, I'll be fine in a minute. Grandma, please go back and put on some clothes first. Be careful of catching a cold. Grandma cares about her, so she is worried about her. Hurry, go into the house quickly. The chickens may be frightened. They are all gathered together. It's raining outside, so they won't run away. Afraid that Grandma would be worried, Mei Shui explained again. There was no other way. Grandma he had no choice but to agree, then be careful. By the time Grandma he got dressed and came out, Mei Shui had already packed the chickens in cages and was carrying them under the eaves. Grandma, why did it rain so heavily today? Mei Shui didn't understand the weather. Seeing that she didn't get too wet, Grandma he felt relieved. It's been a while since the beginning of autumn, and it's the rainy season. Raining is normal. In a few days, there will be heavy floods. By then, I can't leave the village. Grandma he explained the situation in the village to Mei Shui. Why can't I leave the village? Mei Shui didn't understand. You will know when you see it tomorrow. Okay, put the chicken in the back quickly and carry it to death. After closing the chicken, Mei Shui and Grandma went to see the piglets in the back. After seeing that they were still well, they returned to the main room. Mei Shui took off her raincoat. Even though the raincoat could protect her from the rain outside was so heavy that the clothes she wore underneath were all wet. Seeing her like this, Grandma was worried that she would catch cold and immediately asked her to go back to the house to change clothes. Quick, go back and change clothes. Mei Shui also felt the chill on her body. Well, I'll be there right away. She turned around and walked out of the main room. After returning to her own room, Mei Shui quickly took out a piece of clothing and changed into it. Someone is tipping in the bookstore, haha, the author is so happy, thank you and 20170825 for the tip, thank you, the author is no longer a zero egg, a kiss. A new week has begun, and everyone must vote. This is a matter of whether there will be more updates or not. Asking for recommendation votes, asking for rewards, key points, asking for collection, and asking for investment. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 107. Chapter 107, Story, please vote for recommendation. Grandma. He has been sitting in the main room. At this time, she really couldn't sleep because she had something on her mind. But I got used to it gradually. I encounter it every year. I have to get used to it. After so many years, if I don't get used to it, I will drive myself crazy. When Mei Shui came over, she saw 2 cups of hot water on the table. Grandma was holding one cup and the other on her right. Grandma, why don't you go to bed? Mei Shui seemed to have noticed something was wrong with her. Grandma, is something wrong? Grandma. He raised her head and looked at the person walking beside her. It's okay. She shook her head lightly. Sit down quickly, drink some hot water, don't catch a cold. Meixiu was obedient and sat down next to her grandma. She picked up the water and took a sip. It was a bit hot, but she could bear it. Because she only drank a little. Grandma, you can tell me if you have anything. Seeing that her grandma was in a low mood, Mei Shui felt a little at a loss. Hearing Xiaoxiu's voice, Grandma. He smiled at her. Xiaoxiu, do you want to sleep? Mei Shui shook her head. I don't want to. Can I listen to Grandma tell a story? Well, I listen to Grandma telling stories. Meixiu knew that her grandma was worried, but she didn't want her to sit here and talk all the time. It was late at night, and there was a heavy wind and rain outside, so she was worried that she would catch a cold. Grandma, can I sleep with you tonight? Grandma. He looked at Mei Shui with a smile and nodded. Okay, let's go to bed and talk. The story is not as exciting as Peng's, but it is also Grandma He's own experience. It tells the story of her and her husband. It doesn't have much romance, but it is still harmonious and beautiful. Unfortunately, the source of sadness begins from here. At that time, we were poor, every household did not have enough to eat, and there were only a handful of people who could marry a wife, let alone a new daughter-in-law who had a good life. Some have worse lives than their parents' families, and some have better lives than their parents' families. Grandma He herself is the kind of person who has a worse life than her parents. But everyone got through it this way, and she had no intention of resisting. Besides, He Xing'an was also very kind to her at the time. The couple's life is slowly getting better. They welcomed the birth of their son. At that time, every family had a big meal, and finally they were not afraid of not being able to feed their son. But there were many things to do and the work was heavy at that time. Slowly, after raising their son, they were separated, and then they built their own house and married their daughter-in-law. The life of a small family was not very good, but it was very warm. But this warmth did not last long. At that time, the trend of house confiscation in the city slowly spread to the countryside. Red sleeves are everywhere. Everyone must be careful in everything they do. Maybe it's because their family's life is so good that someone is jealous, but Grandma He hasn't found out who it is exactly. Just because someone was jealous, Her man died because of it. Not only that, but his son and daughter-in-law were also affected. The reason is very simple. At that time, there were much more wild animals in the mountains than now. At that time, we were poor and had little food to eat. What should we do if we were hungry? Of course I want to find a way to go up the mountain. After the edible food on the mountain was slowly eaten by the villagers, the wild beasts in the mountain gave up. What should they do if they run out of food? There are many people on the mountain, so of course they can eat humans. At that time, whether it was wild boars or wolves, even tigers existed. In order to feed those who survived, many people in the village were injured and lost their lives. But what can be done? They must live. Only living can have a future. Grandma He, because her natal family is a hunter, many people in the village are envious of He Lao-san, and He Sing-an is also smart. Learned a lot from his father-in-law. If his father-in-law's house wasn't a little far away from their home, maybe he could learn more things. In this way, the animals from the mountains came down and bit people. No matter how willing the villagers were to do it, and because they had little to eat, their thirst for meat became even more serious. The village began to organize young adults to fight against the wild boars and wolves. The events of the past few decades can still be vividly remembered by Grandma He when she recalled them. You don't know, those wolves are very thin from hunger, but the wild boar is clearly right in front of them, but they just don't eat it, as if they are in a fight with someone. Speaking of this, Grandma He was trembling, and Mei Shui felt his trembling. Don't be afraid, there are no wolves now, no more. Mei Shui comforted. Yes, those wolves are still there, but they were later driven to the mountains behind Wild Boar Peak, which was later called Wolf Peak by the villagers. Speaking of this, Grandma He looked at Zioxiu with a worried look. Zioxiu, Grandma knows that you are a capable person and you also like to walk in the mountains. However, you must not go to Wolf Peak. You have to remember it, remember. Possibly out of fear, Grandma He held Mei Shui tightly with both hands. Mei Shui felt the strength in her hand. She could push it away lightly, but she couldn't. Possibly because of being stimulated, Grandma He refused to let go without getting an answer from Mei Shui. Okay, I listened to Grandma, I won't go. I did have a lot of interest in the Wolf Peak, but now the most important thing is to appease Grandma. Don't worry Grandma, I won't go. After comforting her, Mei Shui stayed close to her grandma and never let go of her hand. Grandma He began to talk about the past events again. For the first time, the villagers did not get any benefits, and some people were injured and died. After that, some people who were jealous of her family came up with the idea to let He Lao-san take the lead because he knew how to hunt. This was a desperate matter. Of course Grandma He did not agree. What can you do if you don't agree? Everyone in the village is tempted by the meat. If you don't go, you will be the enemy of the whole village. After a few days of stalemate, the animals on the mountain began to attack the village again. He Sing-an had no choice but to stand up. In order to protect his wife and children, he had to go even if he was afraid of death. In this way, he took a group of people and went into the mountains for 4 or 5 days. When the people came back, they would find a corpse in Ankan. When Grandma He saw it, she seemed to know the consequences. She looked around at the people who went into the mountain together. Every one of them was standing here properly. Some people had injuries on their bodies, and some people didn't even have wounds, but her man was dead. There isn't a good piece of meat on his body. If his face wasn't recognizable, she wouldn't have believed that this was her man. Hians was not yet born at that time, but her mother was already pregnant with him. In this way, a new baby was born in the family, but the mainstay of the family was also lost. I don't know if God opened his eyes. After this siege, the wild animals on the mountain never came down the mountain again. Life in the village began to become more comfortable. Only Grandma He knew that one of the people in that group must be the murderer who killed her man. Unfortunately, after so many years, she has not been able to find out who it was. Those people were all silent about what happened on the mountain. Be sure to remember to vote for the recommendation. This is free, available every day, and will expire at 12 o'clock at night. In line with the principle of no waste, everyone please vote for the author, with a grateful face. End of this chapter. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 108. Chapter 108, Forget It, Happy Valentine's Day. This made her believe in her own judgment even more. She didn't even tell her son about this matter, but her son was so smart. He had admired his father since he was a child, and he had to inquire among his peers intentionally or unintentionally. But nothing new was found. Forget it, she won't be so scared. But less than a year later, the animals on the mountain began to erupt again, and Hyan's father was also seriously injured in this eruption. At that time, Grandma He's family had lost its mainstay. The best they could do was not go hungry, so how could they afford to go to the doctor? Such a serious injury, and it would not look good in the village, so he had to be sent to the town. She begged her relatives, but unfortunately no one was willing to help her. I begged my father-in-law and mother-in-law, but they all stayed behind closed doors. Slowly, she finally found her feet. She lost her husband before and had a son to rely on. Now she has lost her son and has no one to rely on. No matter what, she wanted to save her son, but no one in the village was willing to help her, so she rescued herself. In this way, she and her pregnant daughter-in-law pushed their own cart and drove him step by step to the town hospital. But they had no money, and the doctors were unwilling to use the medicine. Of course, this was no wonder the doctors. The medicines at that time were so expensive, and they might not be able to pay back the money for the medicines they prescribed themselves. But in order to save her son's life, she and her daughter-in-law knelt in front of the hospital door. Some people saw how pitiful they were and gave them 1.5 cents. Grandma He carefully put away the money, hoping only to be able to prescribe life-saving medicine for her son. He Zhengfeng's injuries were too serious and he had been delayed for so long. There was little hope of survival. Just when he was about to take his last breath, a couple appeared. They are May's father and May's mother. "Old man, please get up, it's cold outside." "What's wrong?" "May's mother had a cold today and her fever didn't get better, so she and May's father came to the hospital to see a doctor. As soon as I arrived, I saw an old man and a young man kneeling at the door of the hospital, and there was someone riding on the cart." She felt sad as soon as she saw them, and walked to them inexplicably. Seeing someone coming up to ask her questions, Grandma He's eyes lit up. Maybe this was her last chance. "Please save my son is dying, please." Grandma He kept knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Seeing her mother-in-law like this, He who was a little numb, also kowtowed to May's father and May's mother and said, "Save my man." May's mother was soft-hearted, and the family still had some money. She glanced at her man and saw that he had no objection. "Get up quickly. It's important to save people. Let's go to the hospital first." This sentence is like a drop of water in the desert, which immediately breeds hope in the helpless people. This is also their relationship with the May family. It was a pity that He Zhengfeng could not be saved in the end, but the money was spent. During the few days he was hospitalized, Hyan's was born. His arrival coincided with his father's first meeting with him. After seeing his son, He Zhengfeng left with a smile. Within a year, Grandma He lost her supporter and her son. As for He's mother, after learning that her husband had passed away, she didn't even survive the confinement period and passed away, leaving the family forever. So, Grandma He, a middle-aged woman, shouldered the entire He family. The death of her man and son became a thorn in her heart. From then on, a person who obviously relied on her man and son for everything began to build a turtle shell with a hard shell. Protect yourself and your grandchildren tightly, and do not give those people the chance to harm you. This is also the reason why she ignores all her relatives. Had Xiaoxiu not become familiar with An Liang and the others, she would not have intervened even if they died in front of her. And being nice to them on weekdays is just because she wants to know more. A small favor is a truth, but unfortunately, they were too young to know it. Slowly, those people grew old and died, and Grandma he couldn't do anything about them. The two most important men in her life both died on a thunderstorm night, which made her afraid of thunder and reminded her of the past. The incident at Langfeng has always been a thorn in her heart, and the unfeeling feelings of her relatives made her slowly cut off the family ties between them. If times hadn't allowed it, she might have left here with He-Ans long ago. Fortunately, she didn't leave. What would Xiaoxiu do if she left? She was just pity why good people would not be rewarded. Grandma, it's late at night. Go to sleep. Everything will be fine once you wake up. Mei Shui patted her grandma on the back with a hint of irresistible strength in her voice, making the mentally and physically exhausted old man slowly fall asleep. This is a function that Mei Shui has never shown to outsiders. She used this hypnosis to save herself many times back then. Even powerful beasts can be hypnotized by her, let alone an old man. She has never had the chance to use it since she came here. Unexpectedly, the first time she used it would be in this situation. Seeing her grandma sleeping soundly, Mei Shui gently took out her hand. She didn't know what happened back then, but when she saw her grandma being so sad, all she could do was to stop her from thinking about it and let her forget it. As Grandma said, almost all the people back then were dead, and the few that were left were either not in the village, or were lying in bed dying. The truth is not important anymore. What can we do if we know it? It will only make Grandma more painful. However, she planned to explore the Wolf Peak and kill a few more wolves to avenge her grandfather. That night, there was a thunderstorm, lightning, and thunder. When Mei Shui came out of her grandma's house, Mei Shui's feet went weak. Nearly fell to the ground. The hypnosis she used just now hurt her spirit, so she needs to take a good rest. Meixiu was worried about her grandma. She originally planned to go outside the house to see if the rain had eased a little, but she didn't expect that she actually hurt herself. Had no choice but to return to Grandma's bed. That night, Grandma had a good sleep due to Mei Shui's hypnosis, but Mei Shui had something on her mind and always wanted to visit Wolf Peak. Early the next morning, Mei Shui still remembered what Grandma said last night, so she ran to the yard and looked at the creek. Sure enough, as Grandma said, the creek had flooded. Those households by the creek were surrounded by water. Fortunately, every household was prepared in advance. There were walls built with stones under the houses. No matter the flood, the floors of the houses remained intact. It is still raining outside, even if it is not heavy, it is still rain, and you will get sick if you get wet. Xiaoxiu, what are you doing there? Come in quickly, be careful of catching a cold, he shouted to Xiaoxiu in the yard. Hearing the sound, Mei Shui smiled, it's okay, I'll just see if the water in the stream is big. Seeing that her grandma's face looked pretty good, Mei Shui was relieved. Grandma, why don't you sleep a little longer? Mei Shui walked under the eaves. You've had enough sleep. It's getting colder after it rains. You have to put on some extra clothes when you get up. Seeing that Xiaoxiu was still wearing the thin clothes from last night, Grandma ordered. I really didn't expect that today is Valentine's Day. I wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. As a single author, this is a holiday for loneliness and widowhood. The computer is my lover and I am coding, alas, I have no one to accompany me. End of this chapter. 80s, the farmer's wife is the boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 109. Chapter 109, The Heart of Bagua, please vote for recommendation. It's not cold, it's just right, it's only September, how cold it will be. Okay, Grandma is going to cook, and you can go wash your face. The two of them live a comfortable life, which is what Mei Shui has always wanted. Now that the rice in the fields has been taken back to the granary, the vegetables in the fields will probably grow a lot more when it rains. Mei Shui plans to wait until the rain stops to see them. Take a look. After breakfast, because she had nothing to do, Mei Shui pestered her grandma to tell some stories about the past. Of course, under her hypnosis, she deliberately downplayed everything related to grandma herself. Listen to stories, eat snacks, don't have a wonderful little life. It rained for 3 days this time, and it wasn't until the 4th day that the eyes finally opened, and everyone walked out of the house and wandered around. And when came to find Mei Shui early in the morning, sister-in-law, sister-in-law. Mei Shui was discussing with her grandma what to do when her eyes were wide open, when she heard and when calling her from outside. Put down the bowl and chopsticks and walk to the yard. What's wrong, and when? What happened? The water has receded. Sister-in-law, let's go pick up fish. The flood came and went away suddenly. So fast, Mei Shui was a little surprised and hurried to the door. Sure enough, the water in the stream was receding, and it was still receding very hard. She didn't know where the source was. She really wanted to take a look if she had time. Yes, sister-in-law, hurry up, or someone else will pick it up, and Wen said anxiously. Mei Shui didn't waste any time, and immediately turned around to get ready, bringing buckets with her, and she even took 2 of them. Walk. Grandma, he burst out laughing when she saw how energetic they were. Xiaoxiu, please slow down, but be careful. There are stone knives in the water that have just receded. Be careful and you may cut your feet. Yelled at Mei Shui's back. I know, Mei Shui responded loudly. Not to mention, there were quite a lot of people coming to pick up fish. Mei Shui saw that many places by the stream were occupied by people, so she was not in a hurry and pulled and went towards the rice fields. Let's go inside, there will definitely be more fish inside. Mei Shui was excited. How could such a fun thing be without her? And Wen had the same idea. Sister-in-law, why don't we go pick it up in your field? Your field is close to a stream. Once the water recedes, there will definitely be a lot of fish. Mei Shui originally thought like this and nodded in agreement. Okay, let's go faster. Mei Shui spent the whole morning collecting fish. Unfortunately, no matter how big the fish grew in the stream, they were only the size of 2 fingers. Some of them were even smaller, but she didn't ask for them. She was so gentle that it didn't matter. Small fish have their own way of eating. Anyway, the cooking was quite delicious. The sister-in-law picked up big fish, and he picked up small fish. Soon the 2 of them filled the buckets. Come on, let's go back, we've almost picked up the fish. Mei Shui straightened up. It must be said that her waist was a little sore. Looking at the turbid stream, Mei Shui asked casually, and Wen, do you know where the source of this stream is? And Wen shook his head after hearing this. I don't know. We looked for it when we were children, but unfortunately we couldn't find it. The creek seems to have gone deep into the mountains, and our parents won't let us go in. Who didn't have a dream of treasure hunting when he was a child? Many children in the village have searched for it. Unfortunately, they only reach the place specified by the adults. If they leave again, they will not be able to come back in a hurry. It's very dangerous in the mountains after dark. No matter how small they are, they still understand this. The main reason is that they are afraid that monsters will capture them. When I grew up, I knew there were no monsters, but I didn't dare to spend the night in the mountains. That's it, Mei Shui thought thoughtfully. When will we call on Liang and the others? Let's go find the source and play with it. With such a big water, I don't know what it looks like on the other side of the source. And Wen smiled and said, Sister-in-law, please don't leave. We come here and there again and again. We will definitely not be able to come back before dark. Plus, the road gets harder as we get further inside. That's it, let's talk about it then. At worst, we just don't ask them, it's better to go alone. She has space and is not afraid of the dangers of the night. Even though my abilities are not as strong as those in my previous life, I still have the ability to protect myself. As long as there are no monsters. On the way back, I met many villagers. Everyone looked envious after seeing the fish in Anwen's bucket, let alone the 2 big buckets of fish in Mei Shui's. Anwen, why did you catch so many? Asked an uncle in the village. They are not the only 5 groups of fields here. In addition to a few groups on the mountain, there are many 4 and 3 groups of fields here in the village. This person happens to be from the 4th group. Mei Shui doesn't know him. No one in his own group recognizes him, let alone the outsiders. Uncle Fanming, we picked it up in my 3rd grandma's field. The field at my 3rd grandma's house is deep in water, and Wen said perfunctorily. He didn't know the details. Anyway, he only knew that where his sister-in-law was, these fish swam over on their own as if they had found a home. He really picked it up. Oh, your 3rd aunt, haha, that's true. The man felt a little embarrassed, but his field was also here, but there weren't many fish in it, and the water was very turbid, making it difficult to catch small fish. Well, and when, is this your 3rd grandma's daughter-in-law? Uncle Fanming asked. Mei Shui is also a polite child. Hello, Uncle Fanming. Okay, girl, can I go to your house to pick up fish? Fanming was really envious. Meixiu doesn't care. She knows very well why she can pick up fish by herself. Even if she lets others go, they may not be able to pick it up. Okay, Uncle Fanming, you can go, Mei Shui said with a smile. Thank you. There was no way. His family's field was a bit far away from the stream, so even if the water rose, it wouldn't be flooded much. It would be nice if there were some fish in it. After saying goodbye to Uncle Fanming, the 2 of them also hurried home. Passing by those envious people, Mei Shui just didn't reply and left it to Anwen. Anwen was also a generous person. After explaining, he took his sister-in-law and left quickly. After returning home, Grandma he was not at home, she might have gone to watch the fun again. As soon as the water receded, many people gathered around the stream, gossiping. Grandma he had been imprisoned for a few days, and she couldn't help but wander around the village. Sister-in-law, I'm going home first. Go. Mei Shui waved her hand and let Anwen go. Meixiu doesn't know what to do with these fish. She knows them, but there are so many of them. How can she eat them after killing them? So, she had to go find her grandma. Grandma he was chatting with Grandma Jinghua and the others in the creek where everyone usually gathers. Last time I heard from his Aunt Meng that Anwen's marriage was finally settled, everyone looked at Grandma he and asked. Grandma he didn't care much about these, but she nodded in response to everyone. 3rd aunt, I heard that your family borrowed money from the Anwen family. He Zhenbei's daughter-in-law, Aunt Yang, asked with a calculating look on her face. Grandma he glanced at her and said, can't I borrow it? Her tone was not good. She doesn't like this niece-in-law, she's annoying. Don't forget to vote during the holidays, thanks. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 110. Chapter 110, Grandma he was beaten, please vote for recommendation. Isn't that true? Anne's just got married. 3rd aunt's family still has money to lend out. You think you get a lot of money from selling vegetables, right? 3rd aunt, we are relatives. We are from the same ancestor. Don't give away all the benefits. Outsider. That's right, she was jealous. Grandma he was happy, then the Nguyen family is not the same ancestor as my aunt's family, the 5 groups are basically all with the surname he. For most generations, they may still have the same father. As I said, third aunt cannot favor one over the other and Yang still had some plans. It's up to you to decide what I do. It's my business if I want to lend him money. Why, do you want to borrow money from me? Grandma he straightened her body and looked at her. Aunt Yang is not afraid either. Normally, she is not afraid of this third aunt taking action, but she is not afraid of anything else. This is really unsettling for Yang, and we also want to show him how to look at her. He Anyang is only 17 years old. Looking at him, who can bring harm to a girl to him? He's the only one who still cares about us, so stop dreaming and let him find his own fear. Grandma he didn't save any face. If he hadn't brought harm to the countryside, do you think he could be so carefree in the town now? People around him are a little afraid of He Anyang. After all, he is a second-rate guy. They are just afraid that people will come to him and cause trouble, so everyone keeps away from him intentionally or unintentionally. Third aunt, why do you say that? He just doesn't make progress if he's not brave. That's why we parents want to show him love for money, Aunt Yang is willing to go all out. No, Grandma he didn't want to tell her this. She had thought of it when she was borrowing money, but she didn't expect that the first person to stand up would be her own family. It's really shameful. How could there be none? Your vegetables will be available for sale at the end of the month. Fart, how do you know so much about my family? Grandma he immediately became anxious before she could finish speaking. What, you even went to see my vegetable patch? This made Grandma he a little wary. Aunt Yang is also not afraid of death. That mountain doesn't belong to your family. Would it be illegal if I went up to find some firewood? Seeing the third aunt like that, she wouldn't lend her money. In this case, why should I give you any face? I really think I am the king of heaven. Ha, are you admitting it? I have to go home and take a look. If there is one missing piece of food in my house, it belongs to Jenbei's house. Let's put it this way, I will never be done with your family. You will really treat me as a lonely old woman who is easy to bully. Grandma he's attitude was not meant to bluff, but she actually did it. When she was young, she often fought with those who bullied her in the village. His third aunt, don't be angry, don't be angry, the Jenbei family is just talking, she can't really do this. Some good old people began to persuade her. Humph, even if she has 10 nerves, she wouldn't dare to touch my things. If she does, I'll break her hand. Grandma he said with a look like come on. Aunt Yang is not stupid. She usually talks well and is not afraid of a fight, but she is not that nasty. Plus, my own man is in charge. Third aunt, please don't pour this dirty water on me, I won't admit it, Aunt Yang said with a sigh. That's the best thing, just shut up that stinky mouth and stop asking for trouble. After being persuaded, everyone started talking about Anwen's marriage, and everyone talked about everything. Grandma he has no obligation to help explain the matter, she only listens and plays. As he talked, he soon talked about the grocery store owner. At this time, a discordant voice came over, what else can I do? Maybe what I like is not the food, but the people. At such a young age, I am not ashamed to do business with a grown man. These words were too much. As soon as Grandma he heard this, she stood up immediately, turned around and grabbed the person who made the noise. No matter who it was, she beat him first. It will make your mouth smell bad and make you blind. It was a slap in the face several times, making a loud sound. The one who was beaten also screamed, damn old woman, how dare you hit me? How can I beat you? You still dare to hit me? If you have the ability, hit me. A few more punches were heard. When everyone saw the person clearly, he fell to the ground, his hair was messy. This is not from the Anhua family, how could you say such a thing? The villagers are quite simple, and stealing has never happened in the village, but she actually dared to say such a thing. It's really. Grandma Jinghua pulled Grandma He and told her not to do anything again. After all, she was a member of her own family. So what if I said it? Am I wrong? She looked unconvinced. She went back to her parents' home and told her that she wanted to go out to work, but no one in her parents' family agreed. At this time, I felt so frustrated that I had to follow He and Hua back. Her natal father and brother did not let her go just because the cousin did something bad, but she could not see clearly and thought that wearing gold and silver was very stylish, and she yearned for it. Originally, she wanted to go out for a walk, but she didn't expect to hear everyone praising Mei Shui. She felt very unbalanced, and the third grandmother's family was unwilling to bring her family into business, so she said such jealous words. Everyone grows the same vegetables. Why doesn't the boss like other people's vegetables but only her own? It's weird, Chen Qingqing said without fear of death. When Grandma He heard this, she didn't want her to ruin Xiaoxiu's reputation like this. Besides, it was her who negotiated the business, so it was Xiaoxiu's fault again. You slutty bitch, don't think about others with your dirty thoughts. You are so jealous that you dare to talk about my Xiaoxiu like this. I will let you know the harm. Grandma He pushed Grandma Jinghua away, went up and took her hand and started fighting. Chen Qingqing didn't have that much respect for Grandma He. When he saw her hitting him, he immediately started to fight back. A slap hit Grandma He the face. Over the years, Grandma He had never suffered such grievances. She was yelling and scolding while fighting with Chen Qingqing. When Mei Shui came down, she heard her grandma screaming. She pushed away the crowd and saw Chen Qingqing beating her grandma. Mei Shui could bear it, so she just kicked her. But she was afraid of kicking grandma, so she could only kick Chen Qingqing from the right side. Kicked the person to the ground. Grandma, let me come. Just after the water retreated, there were many small wooden sticks beside it. Mei Shui found a stick as thick as a thumb's finger, and before Chen Qingqing stood up, she whipped it directly. I'll beat Grandma if you dare to do it. I think you don't know how many eyes Lord Ma has. The stick was waving in the air, making a whirring sound. You can imagine how painful it would be if it hit someone. After being whipped, Chen Qingqing immediately screamed, "Ah! It hurts too much." Those people around wanted to step forward to break up the fight, but when they saw Mei Shui's attitude, they all became a little scared. The men in the family all went to pick up fish because the water receded. Even if they didn't go, the men didn't dare to go forward. Asking for recommendation votes, asking for rewards, asking for collections, asking for support. Dear friends of the starting point, invest and start walking. Let me tell you what happened last time when I gave a reward. The author was stupid. The bookstore rewarded an unintentional woman and Wu Xinhua. Thank you. The author is sorry for you. Of course, I also want to thank N20170825 and Linger Ariel for their rewards. Thank you. End of this chapter. 80s, The Farmer's Wife is the Boss. Author, Village Girl in City. Chapter 111. Chapter 111, Broken, an extra chapter for Valentine's Day. Don't hit Xiaoxiu, be careful not to damage her. Grandma Jinghua's heart trembled, she was mainly worried about Xiaoxiu getting hurt. Compared with the two, she liked Xiaoxiu better. She was really afraid that Mei Shui would beat someone up. Grandma He touched her face, it was very painful now. It's okay, I'll be beaten to death. The worst is, I'll stay with you for the rest of my life. I'll stay with you for the rest of my life. Meixia glanced at her grandma and found that there were slap marks on her face, which made her even more angry. You actually hit my grandma, and I'm not done with you. After being beaten more than a dozen times, the grandmother was helped out. She was terrified when she saw the way Mei Shui beat people, but she couldn't let her beat them to death. It will be troublesome then. Zioxiu, Zioxiu, stop fighting, Grandma rushed over. Mei Shui would not listen. Just when the grandma rushed over, she increased her force and slapped Chen Qingqing on the buttocks with a stick. At this time, Chen Qingqing was also blocked by the grandma. Zioxiu, Zioxiu, be good, don't hit, it will be bad if you get hurt. She felt sorry for him. After all, he was a member of her own family. Then what's the deal with my grandma? Mei Shui asked with a frosty look on her face. It was only then that the eldest grandma saw the slap marks on the faces of the three younger siblings, and their fingers were clearly visible. His third aunt, you see, Zioxiu is also venting her anger on your behalf. Can this matter be forgotten? Of course she knows what's wrong when beating her elders. But you have to protect your own family. Why forget it, sister-in-law? You want Zioxiu to slap you, and I'll ask Chen Qingqing to slap you back. How about forgetting it? She, sister-in-law, really knows how to think. Sure enough, the eldest grandma quits her job, but there are so many people here. It would be so embarrassing to be slapped by a junior. With such a small body, Zioxiu would probably not be able to get out of bed if she slapped her. With my three younger siblings talking about Zioxiu's strength, I often hear them talking about it. Chen Qingqing laughed when she heard this. Okay, you smoke. She stood up from behind the grandma, her whole body was in terrible pain. She wants revenge. Grandma, he smiled and said, listen, listen, listen carefully. This is the good granddaughter-in-law you are protecting, and I want you to come forward and get beaten. Most of the people here are cousins. Hearing what Chen Qingqing said, he immediately stopped working. You can beat the old man yourself, but you can still say such shameless words. I really don't know what bad luck my He family has suffered, marrying you, a troublemaker. Even if she were my daughter-in-law, I would dare to say this if I didn't beat her to death. Huh, after all, it's not what I'm used to. Aunt Yang said something fair at this time. It seems that everyone should inquire carefully when marrying a wife in the future. Every one of them accused Chen Qingqing. The eldest grandma was also heartbroken. She glanced at Chen Qingqing and stepped away slightly. People are all selfish, whether it is Chen Qingqing or grandma, or Mei Shui and grandma He. They are all the same, they are both selfish. However, Mei Shui and grandma He are both selfish to the outside world, but they are very protective of their own families. It's none of your business, you're not the one getting beaten, right? Chen Qingqing saw everyone turning towards Mei Shui and immediately stopped. If you can, let her smoke it. Why did we let Zioxiu smoke? We didn't hit the third aunt. And Tu Yang smiled. Besides, I have a bad mouth, but I never touched my third aunt. What, can you still understand me? Hearing this, everyone nodded and agreed in their hearts. The daughter-in-law of Zhenbei, who was usually looked down upon, was now very pleasing to the eye. Grandma He also looked at her twice. When she saw her looking at herself, Grandma He glared at her. Do you still want to fight with me? She said angrily. Third aunt, I'm wrong. It's true that my words can easily offend people, but I've been married into the He family for so many years. How can I really feel sorry for the He family? Unconsciously, this fight turned into a defense meeting for Aunt Yang. And Chen Qingqing was also dragged away by the eldest grandmother under Mei Shui's nose. Perhaps I knew I was in the wrong, so I was very quiet when I left. Mei Shui looked down on him very much. Beating the old man was nothing. If he had the ability to fight with her, as long as she took action, she would look down on him. Grandma He had injuries on her face, and Mei Shui felt very distressed. Grandma, let's go back first, this matter is not over yet. Just hit her a few times, haha, it's just a dream. Grandma He was also angry, and of course she was not done yet. Wait, we will leave later. So everyone joined in Aunt Yang's self-defense. It would be great if you could change this mouth. That's right, this mouth really makes me want to slap it. Everyone joins in. Aunt Yang was not angry either, and even argued with them happily. It wasn't until the men came back that Grandma he got angry and said, "Even so, you are not a good person." Well, now is not the time to talk about this. The old lady was beaten today and this matter is not over yet. So, when the men who had just returned heard that their third aunt, he, was beaten, they all gathered around. When they saw the slap marks on their faces, Grandma he's nephews were all anxious. "Third aunt, who hit you?" He Genbei originally came over to ask his wife to go back and collect the fish, but after hearing this, he broke out in a sweat. As soon as she got close, he slapped his wife in the face. Of course, he didn't slap her in the face. "You dare to fight with the third aunt, you can do it?" He Genbei's actions startled everyone, and the women around him immediately surrounded them. "Genbei, what are you doing? You are crazy. Why are you beating your wife? That is, you don't know the virtues of your own wife, so does she dare to fight against her third aunt? Just start without asking any questions, let's see if you can do it." He Genbei was confused. Isn't this the third aunt that Yang's mother beat? In the village, his own daughter-in-law always joked with the third aunt. He thought. He Genbei, I'm not done with you. Aunt Yang, who came back to her senses, felt aggrieved and immediately pounced on He Genbei and started fighting. He Genbei knew that he was wrong, and he did not dare to fight back. Grandma He and Mei Shui were speechless. Fortunately, there were many people and we were able to persuade them to come down. He Genbei also made amends with his wife, right? When they found out that it was he and his wife who beat him, everyone was furious to death, and the most angry one was He Genbei. "Let's go, beat her. If you dare to hit me, the old man of the He family, you really don't know whether to live or die." The life of Hejia village can be regarded as one of the top 3, plus there are many people in the clan. I'm really not afraid of the Chen family. Looking at such a united group of people, it was difficult for Mei Shui to think of how things happened back then. But why are they doing this now? Just for fame? Now no more than before, reputation is more important than people. A group of people walked towards He Genjing's house. Everyone used their own strengths along the way, saying that Chen Qingqing was not here. One update will stop tomorrow. I look forward to the next time you vote to send the author to the headlines. At that time, one update will take place in 1 month, we will do what we say. Everyone, please act quickly, the update will be next week. There will be another chapter at noon tomorrow, even if there are not more than 10,000, 4,000 will not be less. End of this chapter.